Breath of the Wild ranks high up on my list of favourite games of all time. I've played almost every Zelda game to date, and whilst I love each and every one of them, not one of them has ever come close to the wonder of Breath of the Wild. I've logged far too many hours into the game, and still continue to do so, even now. Loved by many and disliked by few, Nintendo really did deliver with Breath of the Wild. There is always going to be room for improvement though, which is the case for everything in this world. Except for one thing. And on that note, here are 10 things I'd like to see in the upcoming sequel. Disclaimer, these thoughts and opinions are mine and mine only, and it's totally okay for you to not agree with them. Number 1. Improved dungeons and shrines. We know that the sequel is going to be set in the same universe as previous, but for all the love that I have for Breath of the Wild, I'm still left wanting more. Previous titles had some amazing dungeons, and plenty of them. Except this one. Breath of the Wild's dungeons, at a whopping 4 total, were, well, just not all that memorable and a bit samey. Actually, a lot samey. Even the shrines suffer the same fate. They all look identical. Where are my lava-filled caverns, frosty ice floors, and lush and vibrant grottos? Personally, I'd like to see more unique or otherwise traditionally themed dungeons and bosses, and for shrines to mix it up every now and again. Oh, also, mini-bosses. We need more naked monkey butts. Number 2. A time skip. Now, I'm not suggesting Link should be dusting off his ocarina, but I felt like there were several points throughout my playthroughs where I wished it was just, well, a little less inconvenient to further your travels. Especially if said travels involved climbing mountains. Yep, you guessed it. In the rain. Sure, we could just warp off to the nearest inn and then come all the way back to continue in the comfort of dry weather, but if you happen to have the luck that I do, chances are, by the time you've arrived back at your former location, well, I've got news for you. It's raining again. Campfires allowed for you to pass the time, which I suppose in one way or another is exactly what I'm asking for, but you couldn't build them in the rain or if monsters are nearby. Basically, campfires? They sucked. Seriously, you're telling me Link has enough room in his pockets for all of this junk, but the idea of carrying a tent is too much? Jeez. Number 3. More enemy types. Whilst I can beat on bokoblins all day long, I must admit that even I got bored of slicing them down, especially when compared to the incredible monsters of previous titles. The slight colour variations do little for me when it comes to variety. Encountering the same monsters over and over made me more likely to pass up the chance of destroying a nearby monster camp. A giant Hinox is cool and all, but Floormasters and Redead are way spookier. I'm all for Lionels, even if they do manage to kick my ass on the regular, but the game could certainly benefit from a little more diversity. A lot more actually. P-heads and Poes are criminally underrepresented, and I'd very much like to see this changed. Don't make me start a petition, Nintendo. Oh, but you can keep your terrifying dead hands, thanks. Number 4. An improved soundtrack. The first time I heard the faintest tune of Cass's accordion, I was hooked. I'm not even one bit ashamed to say I frequently stop by just to listen to him play. Nope, not one bit. But honestly, this was the one theme that stuck out to me the most throughout all of my playtime. Well, except for when a Guardian had you in its sights, of course, but that's probably for other reasons. Yeah, I don't think I need to explain. I can appreciate a more ambient sound setting, and really, now that I think about it, it did suit the style of the game. But there are still several missed opportunities where a change up in music style would have benefited the title, especially during the Divine Beast dungeons. I always felt like it was too faint, too subtle, which in my eyes, or ears as the case may be, didn't particularly suit the task at hand. Don't get me wrong, the faint tickling of ivories and the enchanting jingles here and there worked great, but it didn't feel substantial enough. I guess what I'm trying to say is, there's not much here that's absolutely iconic. Again, this is just my opinion. After all these years, I find myself humming along to all manner of tunes from previous games, be it Song of the Storms or Zelda's Lullaby. But as far as Breath of the Wild soundtrack goes, yeah, I think I'd rather listen to Malomar on repeat for 10 hours. Number 5. More exploration. Breath of the Wild's main selling point, for me, has always been the beautiful, open and vast setting in which the game takes place. But what if we had only just scratched the surface? Even after all this time, there are things being discovered in the world that you'd not yet experienced in all of your playthrough, and that's truly magical. But what if, and a big what if at that, there was still way more to discover than you ever thought possible? I'm talking caves, long and winding underground networks, underwater segments, spooky crypts, tombs. If Nintendo applied the same diversity to the open world of Breath of the Wild, but improve on it in areas we could only ever dream of accessing, well, let's just say that's a lot of boxes ticked for me to sell a sequel. Number 6. Companions. I always felt kind of alone in the world when playing through Breath of the Wild, like something was missing, especially when in comparison to sailing the seas with the King of Red Lions, dealing with Midna's constant sass, or the relentless haze and listens of Navi.
Hello, look, hey, listen!
Sure, Zelda would chime in every now and again, but that was about it. Now, I don't have much in the way of a suggestion as to who would be a suitable choice of companion, though needless to say, if there's even the slightest chance we get to explore alongside Zelda in the sequel, I'll be a very happy bunny. Number 7. More Korok Seed rewards. Hear me out on this one, and please put away your pitchforks. I just wish the rewards of finding them were a little more worthwhile. I mean, increased inventory space is very much welcomed, but it gets to a point where you get nothing. That is, up until you're given poo. Yes, poo. Number 8. Improved puzzles. I liked shrines, not quite as much as I love dungeons, but I liked them all the same. What I didn't like, however, was this. Maybe I'm just really bad at the game, but I felt like there were some puzzles throughout Breath of the Wild that were a little, well, hit and miss, or just a little too familiar to the last one. It got to a point where I passed by a shrine I had not yet completed, and, well, I just keep running. That's not to say I wouldn't come back at a later date, they just, for me, got repetitive towards the end. I mean, there were 120 of them prior to the DLC, can you blame me? The same goes for the open world. While some Korok seeds were harder to find than others, the puzzles you often had to complete were often too obvious, or just simply too repetitive. And why, oh why, is it we can touch these flowers, but not these ones? Number 9. An improved cooking system. There's only one thing I love more than cooking in real life, and that's cooking in video games. Honestly, you should try it sometime. There is far less cleanup and 100% less chance of ever giving anybody food poisoning. I loved being able to rustle up just about anything without a care in the world. Monster guts? No problem, throw them in. But seriously, please include a means of recording your recipes next time around. And whilst you're at it, the ability to cook multiple of the same recipe, and even a portable cooking pot would be super duper. Before I get to number 10, I'm going to take the time to list off a few brief honourable mentions that I'd like to have included. Fishing. I'm still left wondering to this day why the addition of a fishing pole is not a thing. It seems a little backwards to have to dive into a river in order to catch some fish with, your hands. Romance. Okay, let me explain this one. I want to know if married life is all the bliss that Ronson and Hudson ever hoped it would be. Seriously, Nintendo, if there isn't a wholesome little family present somewhere in the future, I'm going to be very angry, but ultimately go right back to playing your games because I'm weak. More hotkeys and quick selection. Seriously, nothing kills the immersion quite like having to navigate your menus in order to chug a stamina potion. And last but not least, just let us pet the dogs. Please? Okay, this leads us to our final suggestion. Number 10. More iconic Zelda items. I'm talking hookshot, iron boots, a trusty boomerang, whatever this thing is. I could list many more, but you get the point. I mean, one of the biggest issues people have is that you can't climb in the rain. Maybe double hook shots would go a long way in fixing that. I like the sound of that at least. And not to mention, you'd look just like Spider-Man. The inclusion of additional items, be it traditional or completely new and unique, would surely open up the world even further. And whilst we have more than enough to explore as it is, I'm always wanting more. With all that said, Nintendo could implement nothing new to the upcoming sequel and I'd still enjoy the game, based purely off the fact that Breath of the Wild was an amazing game on its own. I love the Legend of Zelda series and Breath of the Wild is no exception here. I'm pretty sure I'll be all too pleased regardless of what direction they take. You know, within reason. If you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing. I'd also like to apologise if the editing style or structure of my videos change a little here and there. I'm kind of new to YouTube and I'm still trying to settle on something that works for me, but for the sake of the viewers, I'm trying to keep it as consistent as possible, but not at the expense of quality. Thanks for watching now, bye bye.